Welcome back, everyone, to Red Spotlight. I'm Alexis, and I'm joined by Peter Martinez, the show that brings you everything coming out of the world of movies and more. This week, we're bringing to you reviews, hopefully, by two films, Gladiator 2 and Wicked, and then anything else that we may be wanting to discuss. This is episode number 494. All right, listen.
Wicked.
Yeah. There's a lot to say about that, but I'm gonna back up because before we get to that, we need to spend about 2 hours talking about something else. In the quickest way I can say this, Peter, do you find yourself amused or confounded as to the conversation that's taken the media by storm this past week in regards to, the media is obsessed with one of these things, and then film Twitter is low-key obsessed with the other thing. I've been noticing film Twitter, and both are in response to Wicked, as it turned out. Film Twitter seems to be very much concerned with the idea of people taking pictures inside the movie theater, and then also people flat out just recording full sequences of the movie and then just putting them on their timeline. That's one thing. And then the media is obsessed with the idea of, should people be allowed to sing in a movie theater?
All three incredibly stupid discussions.
Right? That's why I'm getting it out of the way with right now, because I cannot believe this is what we should be talking about. Is the fact that Disney pulled a fast one on everyone, and we were all just like, yay, let's give it all the money in the world. They took a thing that was a 6-episode TV show, they glued it together into a Frankenstein's monster, and they called it a movie, and now it's the best thing ever, and it'll be the biggest movie of the year, and it's the destruction of society. That is, they didn't even animate the movie, by the way. They took it to Vancouver. They went out of the animation studio to animate Moana 2, and yet you have people who have actual credentials who are saying the animation is flawless. It's beautiful. You saying that and this film making all the money in the world is now going to validate, well, why does Disney have to animate their own movies in-house now? Let's just go ahead and go outside. So, cheaper. Yeah.
Well, first of
anyways, back to the two things I was saying.
The reason why people record clips is for clout. Fuck them. Never a good idea. Taking a picture of the title card, again, clout, just to be like, hey, look, I'm looking at the movie. That's also bad, but that's a lot harder to get people to stop. I don't know what to tell you. I guess don't use Flash. And then
the title card is whatever to me. Fine. If you put it away quickly, I'm not going to get mad at you. But if you have your phone out for extended sequences to record the film,
get fucked.
I'm sorry. Yeah. David Lee just tweeted out, like, isn't that just showing out that you're doing piracy?
Yeah, it is. It's stupid. But again, it's for clout. So people have no shame when it comes to that kind of shit. And then the whole singing, no, you shouldn't sing. You're not there to sing.
Thank you.
I didn't pay my ticket to listen to you sing. I'm sure there will be sing-along events. And if there's not, too bad.
There are sing-along.
Wait for it to be at home. It's as simple as that, you know. Sometimes I feel like taking a shit, but if I'm on the bus, guess what? I don't pull my pants down and drop a hot deuce. Sorry, you can't sing in the movie. I don't care if you want to. It's a communal experience. You pay a ticket, you go in, you shut your damn mouth, and you watch the movie. Unless it's a sing-along, in which case, it's more than appropriate. Go ahead, sing along.
I'm inclined to agree 100% with what you said. And then of course, that idiot, The Rock, went out there and was like, no, people should spend their hard-earned money to be there. They should fucking sing. What an idiot.
Well, The Rock doesn't see movies, so
yeah,
that doesn't surprise me. If you look at his movies, you can tell he doesn't care much about film.
Yeah, very much so. So just to get those two quick things out of the way with, because people have been spending way too much time on this, and then, like, we have real things to discuss here that are quite troubling and quite problematic, and none of those things are it. And the fact that we have people defending those makes me feel like, well, that's why we lose the forest for the trees here, basically. The other thing is this. There is absolutely no one here that is surprised or stunned or shocked at the idea that Moana 2, in quotation marks, I should also just call it the film that is known, or I'm sorry, the combobulated TV show masquerading as a movie called Moana 2, is now playing in theaters. Currently, it has a 67% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is quite low for a Disney animated film. But again, it's not even a real animated film because it was meant to be. It was a TV show that was already done. By the way, this is just the part that just it almost suffocates me how disgusted I am by this. Bob Iger literally admitted in interviews, the animation came back so good. Why do you feel he was making a big deal out of the animation? Because they didn't do it in-house. They outsourced the animation, and he was like, wow, this costs dirt cheap, and it looks almost movie level. Let's go ahead and slap it together, and let's make a quick, easy $1 billion.
Yeah.
Never mind the fact that there's no Lin-Manuel Miranda. Never mind the fact that there's no Ron Clements or John Musker. Let's just go ahead, package it together, and he made the bet, families will not care. And he was correct. And now every single last one of those practices is going to be rewarded and now going to be reinforced as the studio goes forward. Now, that really isn't a surprise. As are the reviews themselves by actual critic voices. I would say, though, that for all those people who were flown over to Hawaii for the premiere and whose reactions were allowed to go first, have you no shame? Of course you don't have any shame. You people are terrible. Just either you have terrible taste or you're fucking liars. How is it that you get over the fact, because you get paid, that's why. But how is it that you get over the fact that every single time you're asked to suck a movie's dick, you're right there to go. You're the first people out of the line. And then everybody else sees it and they basically humiliate your ass. And you're like, oh, well, I got mine. Who cares? Seriously. Anyway, all the reviews came out and everyone was saying this was bad. This was a TV show. This was a direct-to-DVD video that would have been released 20 years ago. And even the reviews that were positive on Rotten Tomatoes are like, well, it's nowhere near as good as the original in every conceivable way, and it's inferior to this, and that, but hey, it's a decent time. I enjoyed myself. Any comment, Peter?
I mean, this is why I don't understand why you were craving those reviews so much. We already knew what this was gonna be. We knew very well.
I meant in regards to
the people that they flew out. No.
I didn't mean no. Your response to any of this, not you critiquing the way that I choose.
So you're mad about the way I commented. Okay.
Well, that wasn't the question that I asked. You just immediately chose to. Let's take this moment to rip Alexis a new one. That wasn't the question that I asked, nor what I would want for you to do. My question was your response to where we are with Moana 2 and this sham of because now we've reached a new low of just like not giving a fuck. And we can't just like allow that. That's like just business as usual.
I mean, it won't stay new low for long, so there's always going to be new lows with them. With each new movie, it seems that way. But I'll answer correctly in the way you want me to. Sorry, I shouldn't deviate from the script.
That's all I ask. That's all I ask.
Yeah, it's just unsurprising. And I think they're gonna continue to do more cost-cutting corners, more sequels. We'll probably get like a Moana 3 announcement not too far from now. Like I saw, who was it? What's his name? I forgot his name, but you know who he is. He made a comment. I think it was on Twitter about the trailer for the live action How to Train Your Dragon, and his whole thing was like, "Oh, like I get it now. Like this movie just exists to continue the IP within the cultural zeitgeist, since they're opening up that How to Train Your Dragon land in Universal Houston, right. Coley, that's who it was.
Yes.
And it's like, yeah, like that's kind of hits the nail in the coffin. That's what so much of this stuff feels like. Like it is there. It exists simply to exist, to continue a brand.
Last week was brutal, by the way. In the span of 7 days, we had that How to Train Your Dragon trailer. We had leaked photos from the Moana live action remake with Dwayne Johnson looking like shit.
Yeah.
In that version of Maui. And then we also have now promotional material for the live action Lilo and Stitch. Truly, truly just dystopian times.
That live action Lilo and Stitch, that one's really killing me. Like that one's gonna be the one that I like, that's it. You know, like that. To me, it'll be like the epitome of like shit to me, because I love Lilo and Stitch so much. And just looking at the CGI abomination, Here,
I don't want to spend too much more time on it because we want to get to the movies. But I feel like I wanted to play for you a video for all of us to hear. This is by Megan Cruz on TikTok, and I feel like she kind of really like sums up like where the fuck we are. And if it seems like it bothers me. It bothers me so much because it just feels like we're everywhere you look, it all is just falling apart. Like this isn't the way it's working now in a way that it didn't work 20 years ago. We're just going to accept this slop. This is what she said. I'm going to play it right now.
It seems pretty undeniable at this point that we are definitively watching the rapid deterioration and potential entire downfall of Hollywood as we know it. And I know there's going to be people who look at something like this and think, what's the big fucking deal? What does it matter if the top 10 highest grossing movies of the year are entirely sequels, even if it is the first time in history? Like, is that such a big deal? These are movies that people liked, and why can't critics just let people enjoy things? There's a few reasons why I think this is happening and why it is definitively awful. And obviously a huge part of it is that we live under late-stage capitalism, right? And corporate greed has never been higher, and the accelerated deregulation of industry, and Hollywood specifically, means that people are getting cut out of these jobs, and they are becoming increasingly soulless. But that's always what corporations were going to do. Capitalism exists to have exponential growth. And so they were always going to try to sell you the lowest common denominator as long as it made them a profit. And that's what they're doing. I think a secondary issue and a symptom of this is the fact that people are accepting it and people are giving them a ton of money for this slop. Like, I can't even, it makes me so mad to think about all of the live action remakes that are happening just in the next 2 years. Like, it's, as someone who loves animation, it's fundamentally irritating to me that the animation is not considered good enough, and we have to just tell the exact same story, do the exact same thing all over again, except make it look worse, because animation actually sometimes is the best medium to tell these stories, just because they know it's going to make $1 billion every time they fucking do it. A huge topic of conversation on the internet the past few years has been about how cringe millennials are because they can't let go of their youthful interests. They still talk about what Harry Potter house they're in, or Marvel movies are still popular because of millennials, or whatever. But often a huge element that's missing from that conversation is the fact that millennials were the first generation that had to cope with the fact that they might never reach the same economic milestones as their parents. Most of my friends and myself still have student loans in our 30s. Most of us don't own homes. Most of us have had to accept the fact that adulthood is going to look very different for us than it is for other people. And I think a lot of people, I think culturally, a very unanimous response to this has been to cling to nostalgia and the things that we identified with as children. I think that Gen Z, in a similar but different way, likes nostalgia for slightly different reasons. It might very well be a coping mechanism to a shitty situation, but it seems like we've created this acceptable new reality where this modern version of adulthood rejects growth and change. And for a lot of people, it seems like life in their 30s and 40s doesn't look or feel all that different from life in their early 20s. And I feel like that is a choice that a lot of people are making, to live in this state of arrested development, because adulthood feels very foreign, unobtainable, and undesirable to a lot of people, because it doesn't come with the same benefits or perks that it did for our parents and grandparents. Problem is, while that might be a coping mechanism that soothes the discomfort and temporarily makes you feel better to just sit in nostalgia and not think about how shitty the world really is, that is just copium. That is us just choosing to accept our shitty circumstances and not do anything about it. And that's not the only issue. The internet, which was introduced to us as this revolutionary tool for the people, has been co-opted again by corporations and twisted into this conformist monoculture that forces people to merely react to culture instead of participate in it. No, I do this too, okay? I'm just as much part of the problem. Please don't misunderstand and think I'm better than this, because every time I choose to see a movie that I'm not interested in just because I think it's going to be important for me to have an opinion on it, because that's what's going to get clicks in the algorithm. Every time I structure my content around what is algorithmically most favorable, I'm part of this, okay? And it drives me crazy, and it's one of the reasons why I've taken some steps back over the past few months, because I'm trying to figure out what exactly is right for me, because I don't want to be a part of this. I feel like we are flattening our idea of identity because everyone just has to be involved in the same conversation, and it's boring and it's exhausting. And it feels like we really are putting the nail in the coffin of true individualism, and that identity is just getting lost in this performance of self that is really, truly self-destructive for all of us. Because how can you actually be an individual if you are performing your identity for millions or even just thousands or hundreds of people, which all of us are doing all the time? And so, of course, conformity is making a comeback, because the thing is, if you are an actual individual, as somebody who has posted truly hot takes on the internet, it sucks to say something that is unpopular. People are straight up just mean to you. Like, hot takes that get 1 million views and are filled with comments being like, so brave of you to say, are not actual hot takes, because sharing an opinion that is unpopular is genuinely not fun in this world. And I think that's bad, maybe. Thing is, I know there's going to be people who are like, it's really not that deep, bro. This is just the internet, or it's just movies. It's not that deep. And the thing is, it is, though, because this is the entirety of what arts and culture is now. The internet and movies, and let's throw popular music in there too. Because for most people, for many people, that is all of the art and culture that they consume. They don't read, they don't go to museums, they see movies, and they scroll the internet. So this is what arts and culture is in the modern world. And it doesn't matter if the people who are making the corporate art are incredibly talented. If that is the only art that people are seeing, that is bad. That's bad. Especially when you take into consideration things like our current political climate and the ways that it could change for the worse very rapidly, even still, even from this point right now. So if I think this is really that big of a problem, like, how do I propose fixing it? I think you have to get out of the fucking algorithm. I think people genuinely need to take steps. You don't have to do things you wouldn't ordinarily do. I don't think that you should just say, oh, well, I'm going to change my life and I'm going to start going to museums or whatever, because you probably won't. You probably won't actually do that. There's so many things that I want to do that I don't do. But I think you've got to get out of the algorithm, and you've got to start actively and aggressively pursuing, finding out, and seeking out for yourself things that seem interesting to you. Because the stuff that is going to get advertised and pushed out is the most broadly appealing stuff out there. It's the stuff that they anticipate is going to make the most money, and that is it. And if that is all you consume, that is soon all that there will be. And there is great art being made out there. Frankly, that doesn't just count for you either. If you have kids in your life, whether they're your kids or just kids of your friends or your family, like, take an active role in introducing them to things that mattered to you or deeply impacted you. Show them shows that you think will add value to their lives, because kids oftentimes are just as isolated as adults these days, and they end up just watching whatever is fed to them or whatever their friends are watching, which is typically just what's fed to them, and it's a vicious fucking cycle. So that's my rant. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know how we come back from this. I don't know if there is any coming back from this. I just feel like it's very hard to be optimistic about really much of anything. I mean, I know in the last couple of years I've been saying, like, well, just take the wins and you can get them. And we had a couple of wins this year with some pretty good movies. And then just, like, enjoy that for what it's worth. because ultimately this is all just coming to an end. Because very much the way that everything is structured now, we're rapidly just going into a collapse. And if we're not going into a collapse, then what we're going to end up with is a society that is just broken beyond repair. If we're not already there already.
See, that's the thing. I don't think there's ever a bottom. Like, a lot of people talk about, like, oh, the United States is collapsing. No, it's not.
I didn't say there was a bottom.
No. Yeah. Shut up. Shut the fuck up.
I didn't say there was a bottom.
Shut up.
I didn't say there was a bottom at all. I didn't say there was a bottom.
Shut up. Let me finish one goddamn sentence, you stupid motherfucker.
I didn't say there was a bottom.
Shut up. What I'm trying to say, before I was oh so rudely interrupted for the 10th time.
One would argue you're being far more rude in that exchange than I was. I wasn't being rude whatsoever, but...
For the 10th time.
Yeah, what? Shut up? You gonna tell me that one more time?
Shut up. So, There we go. Are you happy now? Yes, awesome. So, what I was trying to say is not that you are saying that the United States is going to collapse. What I'm saying is that's what the way most people describe things. They'll see something bad and be like, oh, imminent collapse, end stage capitalism, oh, these things aren't going to be around forever. And the thing is, they will. But that's kind of worse because it's just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. Things will always find a way to continue because people continue to live. So there's always going to be movies. The movie industry to a certain extent will always exist, but it'll just be worse. It'll be TikTok. There's no bottom, however worse it gets, it's how much we choose. It'll be everything you see when you scroll on TikTok. It'll be like that, only now they're considered movies. And that's like the #1 box office shit you see at a movie theater. And it's the same thing for music. It's the same thing for TV. It's the same thing for anything, right? She talked about kids and what kids see. Kids don't look at movies. Not really. They look at Jake Paul. They look at Mr. Beast. They look at Minecraft YouTubers. They look at YouTubers that are like, oh my god, we're gonna put 50 gallons of milk in a tub and then make the biggest cookie and then we're gonna eat the cookie. And like, it's a 10-minute video just to get all the ad space. And it's like endless videos like that. That's what kids watch now. They're not watching movies. They're not engaging in even in that kind of stuff. They don't read. Well, they read a lot, but they're just kind of scrolling social media stuff. They're not reading books as much. So it can always get worse. I guess that's how I feel. And her whole thing is like, well, just look at stuff outside of
algorithm,
outside of the algorithm, which is true.
Which is why we all have always said, and you were the first to ever say on the show, seek out other kinds of movies. Yeah, don't just get the same kind of movie. If you look at a random Letterboxd account, there was a tweet from a year ago. I saw somebody, or 2 years ago, where like the cinephile recommended to their friend the Letterboxd app, and then he looked at what he was watching, and it was all Marvel movies. Yeah. Like literally every single one of them were Marvel movies. He missed the point entirely. The point is to just venture outside of that and to get different flavors because it enriches who you are. Like you, personally, I can say, have enriched my life because you have introduced me to all these other kinds of stories and films that I would really not have sought out on my own if it wasn't for the constant, incessant persistence of it's going to be okay. You're going to like it. They're good. And I'll even get in your face and say it's better than the shit that you like.
But most people don't have
does that not describe who you are to a T?
But
most people would probably just punch you out. I mean,
yes, very true. That's true. That is very true. But I guess that actually dovetails into my next point correctly. On an individual level, I think that's good advice, you know? Like if you're someone that's constantly complaining about like, oh man, I hate that all these endless sequels and all these movies, it's like, okay, if you hate that, then seek out better films. They exist. They release thousands every year. Seek them out, give them your money, support them, you know, so that more independent art and stuff like that is made. But the reality is most people don't care. It's like the news media thing. Like most people aren't going to seek out a better, what do you call it? They're not going to seek out facts and cross-check and analyze. And again, it's one of those things where I don't blame them, right? Most people lead busy lives. They work a lot. Maybe they have families they take care of, and in their off time, they want to relax. They want to spend time with friends. They don't want to put in all this crazy effort into something where they're like, maybe it's the importance of it was never instilled in them in the first place. I know tons of people who are just like, I just don't care about politics. Like it's just not
that wasn't
a thing.
A problem with movies because you would get a different flavor of movies every week because they would be made in the first place. Mid-budget films were the king, really, of the box office, low key, underneath all the big blockbusters. But now it's just blockbusters. When you just mentioned this year, this is the most depressing year. Inside Out 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, Moana 2, fucking Kill Me. Like that's really all there was.
You said it like that was the title of a movie.
Well, Moana 2, fucking Kill Me.
Fucking Kill Me. Great subtitle. Well, yeah, that's the thing though, right? It's the same with entertainment now too, right? Like, yeah, before they would see what was at the movies, right? But movies were that's another thing. Movies were for poor people, you know? They were cheap, get a couple of dollars, can go see a movie, beat the heat, air-conditioned place. And just, there was an opportunity for more films to rise to the top. That just doesn't exist anymore. And I think the internet is like the biggest... I think the internet is like responsible. Like, if you wonder why the world is so shit, it's like 50% Reagan, 50% the internet. Like, I really think that's the way the breakdown works. Because, this is how I know it's like almost it's just a losing battle. Because I'm on the internet all the time too. Like, I deleted TikTok, but I had it before, and I just like, you know, I'd scroll and then like look up and it's like, oh, 2 hours have passed. I couldn't tell you what happened in those 2 hours. It's just like mind numb, just like nothing, you know, just scrolling for 2 hours. And like that was like, oh, that's bad. Like that really sucks, right? But most people aren't gonna have that feeling, right? Because it's normal. It's like, well, everyone's on TikTok. Everyone uses TikTok. It's the same thing with like, who's gonna feel bad? No one should feel bad, right? Like going to go see Moana 2. It's like, oh, I love Moana. It's a great kids movie. Oh, I have my kids. Let's go see it, right? It's like everything. It's the same with the news media. It's like, yeah, you're gonna scroll and then you're gonna see a headline, and it's like, oh, it seems like Obama. What, secret kid? Oh shit, that's crazy. I didn't realize that. And it's like, it's a fake headline, it's bullshit or whatever. But I don't blame people for like, yeah, seeing a headline and being like, oh, I guess it's true. Like, and getting something out of that. And it's the same with the movie industry. It's like a fucked up cycle that I think it's impossible to kind of break due to things like the internet and cost. I think because movies are so expensive, people aren't willing to give chances to films. They want to know that they're spending their money in ways that they will enjoy. So they're gonna go see sequels. They're gonna go see films from the studio that they've enjoyed the most, which is Disney. And it just kind of creates this cycle where no other kinds of films and art forms can break through in the same way. And it's always sort of been like that to a certain extent, of course, but it's just throughout the years, it gets worse and worse and worse and worse.
And in the last 8 to 9 years that we've been podcasting, we've seen it just fall off a cliff.
Yeah. Well, and I think the fact that this is the first year where every film in the top 10 is 100% a sequel kind of shows like, yeah, this is where we've been heading. Like, this is the right, I was saying up, but kind of decline. The way to fix it, honestly, fix the internet, which next to impossible. But 2, which I think is possible to fix, is just make films cheaper or movie theater going cheaper. Like, people want to make it more of a luxury, you know, to sort of make it worth their money. And I think you should actually go in the opposite direction. Make it cheaper to go to a movie theater. Like, if movies were consistently $5 everywhere, you'd see it skyrocket. And I think you'd see people more willing to give different films a chance, because it's like, hey, it's cheap. I got $5. Hey, there's this movie. It's kind of weird. If it was $20 with like $30 on top of that with drinks and maybe another person, a kid, yeah, I wouldn't do it. But because it's $5, yeah, I'll take a chance. You know, I got time. I think the price is a big stickler. That's tough. I don't know how you change that, but I think it's even tougher to change the internet. I don't think that's going to change, especially now with this last election. Like,
with our shadow president, Elon Musk, you mean? Yeah.
Well, because, yeah, the internet was supposed to be this amazing thing that made everyone smarter and better. I don't think it's helped people whatsoever. I think it's just made things worse. I think it helps people just find the things that numb their brain. And again, I'm not above this. I'll just find myself scrolling a lot, and it's just nonsense, you know? It's like hours of my life are gone for what? Like 50 cat videos in a row? There's a cat next to me. Why am I looking at cat video? It's that kind of thing. It's not great. And I'm someone who's actively trying to not, you know, do that, and I fail all the time. So, and most people aren't actively trying to fight it at all. They're like, no, it's fine, it's whatever. So of course they're gonna be sucked into it. It's just a tough thing. It hits certain neurons in our brain, and they're designed that way specifically. Yeah, it's bleak, but I don't know.
It's where we are, and I don't know if any of this discussion that we had about people closing themselves off to different kinds of art or anything really. I've, in these last couple of years, and you'll find me being very defensive of Wicked right now in a couple of minutes, and that's because, and I will fully admit this, I grade musicals on a different curve than anything else, because I feel the most in danger of being extinct. And that definitely felt that way with these last couple of years. Granted, some are pretty terrible, but there have been some pretty good ones along the way as well. And I feel like just the fact that if a year goes by and I get one musical, I feel like that's a win for me personally. So I don't necessarily am in the business of tearing them down. But what has gotten me enraged is this persistent, and we didn't discuss it too much so a few weeks ago when we were talking about Joker Folie à Deux, because that film, quite frankly, had bigger issues than the fact that it was a musical. But and the fact that, yes, Wicked this weekend made $114 million, because Wicked's a big name. And I feel it just kind of coalesced around it coming out at the right place at the right time. And here's where we were. But
yeah.
Or did you have something to say on that?
No, I was just saying, I think if you love musicals, you should be very happy that and I'm not saying this to you, I'm saying in general that this film was
Did
successful.
well. Yes, and
it was kind of like
happy.
the last, I think,
the last hope.
the last hope. If it had
Yes.
bombed, it's like, yeah, never again. In
Yes,
like 50
and the
years.
fact that it did so well, it gets the genre as a whole can get a reprieve. They can just breathe a sigh of relief for the moment, a stay of execution, if you will.
Basically, yeah.
And then some were even saying, well, maybe Disney can wait a couple more years and still crank out that Hamilton, and maybe it still will be big. Who knows?
That they
If
should have
Wicked was 20 years.
greenlit that
I know.
shit the second.
A long time.
Insane. They're
It's
so
been 4
stupid.
years. Yeah. That being said, of course, they're obviously making billions this year off of 3 films alone. So, I mean, stupid is as stupid does, but evidently they make stupid decisions all the time, and yet they're rewarded for it continuously. The point is, I'm very happy about Wicked's success. I'm so happy that I will overlook any kind of bitterness how West Side Story was just kind of completely ignored, and how much of a better film it is overall. But hey, let's just enjoy the party where we're at, right? Let's enjoy the party that we're at with Wicked, and let's just celebrate that, because genuinely people are enjoying themselves at this movie. I'm very happy that it's proven to be a cultural event, despite the fact, and this is where I was leading with this, that so many people just close themselves off to this genre of storytelling, particularly. You yourself even were making a joke of it when the movie started, and you were like jokingly saying to me, I didn't know this was a musical. And then I hear stories, and of course you knew what it was. And then I hear stories of people who were like just surprised and angry that they were at a musical. And then there was one review of this guy who was just like, just didn't like it. I just can't get into musicals. Well, you know what? I just can't get into NFL sports. So,
I mean, fair.
Who's the boring one here?
Well, that seems
I'm
defensive.
Sorry. I do take it personally, because I cannot fathom how you just close yourself off to feeling of all kind, but you're more than happy to stare at a goddamn game where I'm just like the whole time. I just can't. I cannot relate, and it confounds me, Peter.
I mean, I think it's just difference of opinion. They're different strokes, different folks. I like chocolate, you like vanilla, stuff like that. Yeah. The big thing to me is just there's been a string of bombs when it comes to musicals, especially that Joker one. Ooh boy, they really hurt.
In fairness, 3 of them were terrible. Joker, Follow You Do, Dear Evan Hansen, and Cats.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like, Joker really, they took down musicals with them. They didn't have to do that. They shouldn't have made it a musical. But,
yeah.
It's one of those things where Wicked came at the perfect time just to, again, basically say it's a stay of execution. Now you will have, you will continue to get musicals greenlit. Again, it still won't be a lot, but it'll exist because this film was such a hit, and people are like, "Oh, I love the music," and da 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 da. You'll still see like other stuff out there being made, which is good. And yeah, there's music. It's so crazy that musicals just aren't big with people nowadays, because that used to be the form of film. Yeah, musicals were the blockbusters. That was it. You went to the theaters to see musicals. Every movie had to have like a song and dance in it, even if they weren't technically musicals. It was such a big thing. So yeah, it's interesting how maybe it's because music is different. I don't know. I mean, society changes, I guess.
Yeah, but there's just this pervasive feeling of people just being allergic to it, you know? But then many of these people would probably also be like, well, I don't really care for musicals, but if you're going to throw on my favorite childhood Disney movie, then all of a sudden, well, I guess in that case, maybe I will like musicals. But when it comes to anything else, there's just this like really just almost kind of irrational resistance to it where I'm like, I cannot. And again, this also kind of just speaks to the performative nature of almost everything. Is just like, well, I cannot be seen as someone who likes musicals, therefore I will not like musicals.
Maybe this idea that they're lame, they're old, they're for grandmas. There could be.
Do you have any hang-ups with musicals? I think you seem to enjoy them for the most part.
Yeah,
it's not your favorite.
I'm not a theater kid, so they say.
That's
right?
different.
Like,
that's different.
I'm not nerdy.
It's just musicals in general. Then there's Broadway musical like history.
Yeah, but I'll say I'm not nerdy about them. You know, like I don't lose my shit at the idea of a good musical.
Right.
It's like, oh, that's cool. That's neat. I like my favorite musicals are the ones where you forget they're musicals. So like The Nightmare Before Christmas, right? That's technically a musical, right? But people don't think about it in that way.
Nope.
Most of the best Disney classic animated films, you know what I mean? Technically musicals, but people almost don't view them in that way. Grease, as you say, I think that's why people love it. It's like the music is just incorporated in such a way where it obviously adds to the film in a big way. But it doesn't stand out in a way where it overtakes the film, where it's like, oh, this is, you know, quote unquote a musical, and big bold words, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So with that being said, then should we go ahead and get into the actual review for Wicked? Do you have the Letterboxd app open in front of you?
It's here. Wicked, directed by Mr. John M. Chu. Everyone deserves the chance to fly. When ostracized and misunderstood green-skinned Elphaba is forced to share a room with the popular aristocrat Galinda. Well, Galinda. They spelled it wrong. The two's unlikely...
Galinda or Glinda?
They wrote Glinda.
Okay.
Her name is Galinda.
But then she does change it, doesn't she?
She does change it at the end. But if I'm giving a
Right.
synopsis for a film, I'm probably going with what they are at the beginning.
Yeah.
The two's unlikely friendship is tested as they begin to fulfill their respective destinies as Galinda. See, this is where you would write it correctly. Galinda the Good and the Wicked Witch of the West. Starring Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande. Who cares about the rest? You're here for those two.
Yeah, basically, right? You're not going to say anybody else's name?
I mean, Jeff Goldblum's awesome. Michelle Yeoh. Jonathan Bailey as Fiero. Marissa Bode as
Fiero,
Nessero.
I think, right?
Oh, Fiero. Ethan Slater as Bach. Bowen Yang. That's who it was. Peter Dinklage. I was like, that voice is so goddamn familiar.
I didn't pick up on it. I didn't pick up on it at all until I realized it was after. It was Peter Dinklage.
I knew it was a voice I had heard 1,000 times. I was like, oh, I know who this... But I couldn't name it. Half the movie, I was just trying to figure out, who is this? It sounds so familiar. But yeah, a lot of people. You want me to start or you want to start?
There's a lot to say about this in so many ways. All I'll just tell you is I was looking forward to this movie just by the virtue of it being a musical, because I was very much in the mood to see a musical film. Mm-hmm. It had been a while. I had been deterred various points throughout the year over the, to put it very fairly, less than stellar color palette of the movie. In fact, I was very much put off by it all throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
I also did not have the confidence in John M. Chu as a filmmaker. I mean, I enjoyed In the Heights very much, but anything else I don't necessarily care for. He also did Crazy Rich Asians, which I don't even remember watching. Apparently I did, but I don't recall very much of it. So kind of really didn't have the strongest sense of assurances that this would be good, because I think I wasn't sure what we were walking into. Are we walking into a situation where it's like on the good enough territory like Wonka? Or Wonka, is it more of a Wonka, or is it more of a so-so like Color Purple? Or is it terrible like Dear Evan Hansen? Like, you're not really sure which way it's going to go. I also was very much worried of the thought that they split it up into 2 parts. Like, that was just, that's always a red flag when it's like, oh, cash grab, part 1, part 2. Let's go ahead and do that. So there was just so much not to be sure of. But I was enthused by the mostly positive response that it got. Mostly, I should say. Not unanimous positive response. So I had like, okay, maybe this will be pretty okay in the end. So I walk in there, and I gotta say, I didn't walk out loving it. I didn't walk out like, on cloud 9, just like, oh my God, this is amazing. I do have my issues with the movie. And again, as you mentioned, one of the biggest issues was that there was really only 2 numbers that were like great. Well, memorable would be the one, right? Mm-hmm. I have gone back and seen it a second time. I enjoyed it a lot more the second time. And that might have to do with the fact because on the first viewing I was kind of like, huh?
The Company?
No. The first time I was more just kind of like, I was like much more like conscientious, like, okay, how am I feeling about this? How is this going? The second time I'm just like much more at ease with what the movie is and just enjoying the parts that I can. Although I will say that second time, I really noticed just that gray filter, and oh my God, does it really bring it down? Like, look, I think it goes without saying. I think the positives of this movie you and I are going to agree with on the whole, and maybe to a degree the negatives. I'd say the biggest issue when it comes to the filmmaking standpoint is, personally, I don't think anyone really has been able to come anywhere close to what Steven Spielberg did with West Side Story, and just in terms of the framing of shots and the cinematography by Yamish Kamensky, and then also just the plain choreography. That film, West Side Story, kind of blew it all out of the water in every way imaginable. I don't think anything has been able to capture it since. Peter, I was just saying, as you walked away real quick, I wasn't expecting it, but still nothing can really compare to West Side Story from choreography, the framing of shots, or cinematography. And I think this continues to just show how much of a rare example West Side Story was in that regard, just from the filmmaking standpoint alone. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where, like, because it really does hurt you even more when you're comparing yourself to The Wizard of Oz. Or if you're a continuation of any kind to The Wizard of Oz, all you got to do is look at that side by side of the colors, the technicolor that's popping of Wizard of Oz. And then some of them are recreated for this movie, Wicked, and this just gray sludge filter on top of it all. There are moments of color. I think when it's indoors mainly, when they're in an actual set that's in an indoor set, I think it's fine. But when they step outside and it's all just artificial because they're all obviously on a soundstage, that's where it's just like, okay, gray. I that's just the big thing bringing it down. I liked it. I gotta say, I liked it. I liked it a fair bit. I think it helps very much so that I really loved the two performances at the top that were kind of like the anchor for the whole film. If they didn't work, this movie wouldn't work. So they kind of saved the whole thing really in the end. And if they didn't work, it would have been a disaster. I think people have complicated feelings about this movie from what I've been hearing. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it, because from what it sounded like, you seemed to enjoy yourself. You were laughing at all the bits of comedy. There was some pretty good comedic moments that were in there somewhere. Some of them were pretty. There were a couple. I mean, Bowen Yang was funny. There was a moment where Fierro came in. He was like, "Enroll here often." It was just so stupid. But yeah, it worked for the most part. I will overlook the CGI so much.
I won't.
I can overlook it to a degree. I can, but it's still a big like anchor on like the overall review of this. Anyway, your thoughts?
I mean, I wasn't like excited for this movie or anything.
No.
In fact, I was like nothing about it looks enticing necessarily. Not crazy about the angle of the story,
right?
Even Ariana Grande and Cynthia Rubio, I'm like, I'm not a stan, I guess you would say. Like, I'm not losing my shit over like, oh my god, I can't wait to see them. But it was enjoyable. Like, I get why a lot of people are really, really loving it and going like, oh my god, it was amazing. Oh,
I can see why the theater nerds love it for sure.
Oh, for sure, yeah. No, I get the love for sure. It was enjoyable. I had a good time watching it. I was like, yeah.
Which is a win. That's a win
for sure, 100%.
Because I'm sure a lot of people are gonna go to Moana 2 and like, man, this is boring.
Yeah, I wouldn't even watch it.
Yeah, no.
It's one of those things where sometimes a good movie though can be a little more frustrating than a blatantly bad film, because you can see the great film buried underneath it.
Right.
So it's not that it's worse, it's just more frustrating. Where it's like, oh, it's good, I thought that enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Oh, but it's frustrating because I just know if they just change this here and change that there,
gosh,
I could love this. It could be great. You know what I mean?
I felt that way a couple of times in this movie while watching it. Like, I gotta tell you, and you have to, I feel like you'd be hard pressed to find a more disastrous sequence as far as execution and lighting is concerned. In the middle of the film, there's a dance number called Dancing Through Life when they're in this library. And I swear to God, that might be one of the worst lit scenes I've ever seen in a movie. It almost felt like they were trying to do... For those of you who are aware of Janusz Kaminski, who is Spielberg's longtime cinematographer, that man knows, especially with lighting, and especially with windows and lighting, he knows how to do it. And in this movie, it was unbelievably distracting how bad it was, because the camera didn't even know what to make of all of that, because who was even the focus of that dance number? It kept going this way, that way, and then the light was actually blinding in a really bad, ugly way, and then somehow it still looked flat.
Well, it's because it's overlit. Like, there's no shadows. That's the thing. I guess that's the thing that hurts is The Wizard of Oz. It's like this magical place. You know what I mean? Like the wonder to Oz. And it just hurts when you look at the film and it's supposed to be Oz and it just kind of looks like a flat car commercial. And we've talked about this before, right? Where it's like, I want to get swept up in like the magic of it or the majesty, but it never comes through in any way of like, oh my God, this world. It's so like, even stuff like, I think back to like the first Harry Potter films, right? The way those are sort of shot and made, and the practical effects and the way you get swept into the world so hard. They're really, really well done. Like the first two, because that's when they're a little more whimsical, and the third one they get more adult. They hit puberty. It's like yeah, it's not terrible. It's just standard, you know. It's standard Hollywood staleness visually.
Yeah.
And it can hurt because you look at the sets, right? And it's like, oh man, these are beautiful sets, right? You look at
they actually made sets for this movie.
They made a lot
and
of
it even hurts
incredible
worse.
sets. Yeah. You see the costumes and you're like, wow, they put a lot of effort into these costumes.
Yeah.
Even Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, you're like, damn, they're giving it their all, you know?
Yeah.
They're singing their hearts out. They're really, you can tell they care a lot about this film and stuff. And it's like, at the end of the day, film is a visual medium, right?
Yeah.
With a play, not so much, right?
No.
Because you can even go back and look at recordings of the play. They're mostly standing there. They dance a little and they're singing though. Like there's no background, you know. It's dark. It's more about the performance of those actors. The plays seem to be just like very actor driven, you know. But films are a visual medium. It's about how you move the camera when they dance and how it's shot and how it's lit. Like that, those are very, very important things to a film. And they range from like standard modern day Hollywood blockbuster fare to maybe even worse in some instances. And the same goes for the CGI. I never walked away going like, oh man, that looked terrible. That looked
Not one
like
time.
ugly. Like, oh, that's the worst.
Which, by the way, these days you never know.
You never know. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. But it was just always like, just very. There's just no life to it, you know. It's
very artificial.
Very artificial. It's not terrible. It's just feels artificial, right? And it just, I don't know. There's a lot of films 20 years old where I can point to the CG, very CG heavy affected films, and it just never comes off that way.
The Phantom Menace.
Yeah, the Phantom Menace. I mean, yeah, to a certain extent, yeah. I got them right here. Like the Pirates of the Caribbean films, you know.
Oh, those movies are perfect from a craft standpoint. They're just perfection. Lord of the Rings, as you mentioned, the first two Harry Potters, like,
and Oz is kind of up there, you know, when you think
it should be anyway
of these fantasy worlds, and it's very just bland.
Yeah. When you look at how limited they were in 1939, and yet look what they were able to pull off.
Yeah, you go back and you look at that film. It's still magical, right?
Yeah.
Like you can tell that it's a soundstage, and they have those like matte paintings,
these big backdrops,
big backdrop matte paintings, but it works. It's like beautiful. It gives
it's strange how it works, but it works very well.
Yeah,
it works so much, and the thing is that it helps that those backdrops and those matte paintings were real. They were physically there. The artificiality of VFX destroys that completely. Your eye can tell that shit ain't real.
Like, people are talking about, like, oh man, I wish the CG animals were more animatronic. I get making them CG, you know, it's a goat and it like a snow leopard, and
I think people had bigger issues with the CG animals in Gladiator. Because in Gladiator 1, they had actual animals, I think, right? They had actual tigers.
They had a tiger on
right?
set, yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Whereas in Gladiator 2, they have monkeys and sharks and.
I mean, but I don't want them to throw a shark. And that's the other thing. I don't want them to throw baboons. In a pit with a bunch of actors. Like, I kind of don't want that. So it's
my commentary was, it seemed to me from the conversation, people had more issues with the CGI animals in that movie versus this movie. Maybe it was all around, just no CGI animals, but.
Yeah, and I guess that's the frustrating part, because like everything else is rocking on all cylinders. The music, they're singing their hearts out. The actors are acting their hearts out. The costume designers came to play. So did the set designers. But then
The music's great.
Yeah. But then just visually, from a director standpoint, it's just it's all just visually very bland. And it brings down other aspects of the film, like the set design, where it's like, man, it feels more lively behind the scenes photos. Yeah.
You and I saw last year's Color Purple.
Yeah.
I think more than anything, that's also the big issue with that movie too, was that the direction just seemed directionless.
It killed me because I saw the Spielberg directed film before it, and it's like, damn, like such a beautifully made film. And then to watch this, and it's just so, to watch the new one, it's just very sterile. There's just like nothing to it, and it gives this feeling that all musicals are just sterile, like visually.
Did you get that impression from Wonka?
No, that's the other thing. But I more so than that, it was what do you call it?
West Side
Story, also made by Spielberg. So it goes like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, you can imbue that beautiful direction in musicals in this way. It's crazy that where did West Side Story take place? Chicago, New York City, and
the concrete jungle, New York City.
The concrete jungle looked more magical than Oz.
It?
That's not good.
That's so sad to say out loud, but it's the truth.
Yeah,
it's the truth.
No. So, yeah, that's I think that's probably the biggest complaint, because like I said, everything else I think works well. Also, this isn't a complaint. It's kind of like West Side Story, where it's like the story itself I'm not crazy about.
I wonder if it's a Broadway thing. Maybe it's just a Broadway thing to have stories that are just to have this little thing that irk you.
Well, that's why I said
don't work for you.
It's one of those things where I think it's just it's very. I wouldn't change it. I guess that's my point. Like it doesn't. It's very theater. It's very theater kid. Like I get why they love it. And some of it, I'm just like, like I wouldn't play it this way, but I also wouldn't change it, because I think to change it would be to just sort of strip it of its identity, and I don't want to do that. Like, it's easier to just go like, well, it's not 100% made for me, and that's fine, because in fact, I think that's great. I think there needs to be films made for everyone that exists, And I think that's cool that a lot of people will see this and go like, oh, this was made for me. Right. And I kind of talked a little about it before it came out, like the whole, like, it's the real story. It's them in high school, college. The ages also threw me off a little bit, because I'm like, you're all going to school, and it's like, ugh.
Most of these people were over 35 years old.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, that thought didn't come to mind. I was more so distracted by other things.
Yeah.
I thought they were great. And I mean, ages have never necessarily bothered me. And you can't do any worse than in Greece. Some of those people should not have been in high school. So,
but it kind of works in its favor.
In Greece?
Yes. I think it almost kind of works. I like it. It's a staple. Also, people back then looked older. You ever see pictures?
Yeah, that's true. No, that's true. That's a correct take to have, because it is the truth. People did look older back then. That's not really in dispute. Okay. But it is hilarious, though, because in many ways, this is the first kind of version of this story. Because the problem is, maybe the lack of enthusiasm could be with just the inundation of stories where, like, well, here is a story about the bad guy and how it turns out she was an anti-hero the whole time. Or now we'll have a YA adaptation where we see how they met each other in high school. We've seen so many franchises have chapters like those. And then this comes out here when we've seen so many of them, but it turns out this was kind of the original to do so. And I didn't know this myself. This was first, Wicked was kind of a book first. And then Wicked was turned into the musical that we all know. And now it's a movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another reason why I don't like hold anything to it. It was definitely the first. It was the first. Like I remember Wicked being big. When did it first appear on Broadway? 2000,
2001, 2002, around there.
around there, early 2000s. And it became
Yeah.
a big hit like almost immediately. And it definitely spawned that sort of thing of like
And everybody already knew Defying Gravity because it's been everywhere.
Yeah.
That song for years and years.
everywhere. So yeah, that's the thing. Like, I wouldn't want to strip it of all that stuff, right? Like there's a whole song where Furio's like, "I'm hot, y'all." Like,
Which one? Oh yeah.
in the library,
dancing.
like
That's that.
don't think,
the,
you know.
The lighting was terrible, but I thought it was hilarious how everybody was thirsting for him. Like that was.
But see, that's the thing where it's like, oh, this is theater to the max, and it's like, yeah, I wouldn't change it because this is who it's for. This is how it's made. Like, it's not an issue with the movie; it's an issue with me. Where it's like, when I think of Wizard of Oz, I like the film, and I like it in a more sort of, what do you call it? Just more of a adventure type, mythical world.
Mhm.
And this is more of like taking that and sort of turning it on its head and being, that's kind of the point,
Mhm.
So yeah.
I will say, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, it's good.
I really enjoy the fact that Ariana and Cynthia get something really special to work with here. I know that they kind of been like laughed at for getting overly emotional. I mean, actors are overly emotional. I mean, they're
also
rich people,
theater
also.
kids. They're
So-
rich
and they're also-
people,
yeah.
theater kids. Yeah.
They are what they are.
Mhm.
Cynthia Erivo, I first was introduced to in a film that's I hold a special connection to because it's one of those films that I loved and everybody else did not, which was Bad Times at the El Royale. That was the first big movie where she first I think made her presence known. There we go. I should have included you in that, although I knew you kind of would butt in a clever way, and you did.
Well, I can't disappoint.
Ariana Grande is someone who's been I've been following their they've just been put in my face either through TV or for music for over 10 plus years now.
Yeah.
And I've always thought she has one of the best voices in the industry ever since she first came on the scene. And just to see her not only live up to this, but really surprise a lot of people in a lot of ways. Everybody knew she could sing well. The style of basically the Broadway style that she's showcasing in this, I'm not sure how many people had been exposed to what she could do. And she did it very, very well. But also just the comedic timing to her performance and really just enveloping herself or immersing herself into what Glinda is actually. She's hilarious. Every time she's on screen and she does something, she's not even saying words. There's scenes where Michelle Yeoh is welcoming Cynthia Erivo, and then in the background you see her trying to weasel her way into it by just running around in the background. You see her coming this way, or even in Popular, where she's just it feels like sometimes she's just riffing and then just doing her own thing of just she's trying to conjure magic and she's humming and then she's just going lower and lower and lower. And the second time I was watching the film, there were these people who were just cracking up because of how good she was landing those moments, especially. And then of course your heart just goes to Cynthia Erivo, the way that she plays it. To me, those two are so great together. It makes for a very pleasant experience watching it. But I will say, and this is just maybe a personal thing, there were many times when I was watching the film where I was just reminded of real life, and it's just oh my god.
Oh yeah, I didn't really know the story before going in, and I was like, what the fuck is this shit about animals and yeah, it started going
that
places.
threw me.
Yeah.
That threw me. I didn't know. I wasn't expecting it, and it goes places where I'm just
okay. I was like, this is interesting. Okay, I didn't. Yeah. I like the way it starts with like them announcing like, oh, she's dead, and
Yeah. But I mean, it's very true to the film Wizard of Oz, right? Those Munchkins are just like, ding dong, the witch is dead. I mean, they're ready to go. They even had a goddamn a pyre ready to go for when she would die.
I don't want to get political here, but I miss me some Little People Munchkins.
Grace Randolph made a really interesting comment in her review of Wicked, saying that Peter Dinklage really closed the door behind him. As far as like some of the comments that he may have made.
Yeah.
I don't think he's
allowed to make those comments though, right?
I don't think he's wrong, and I don't think he's wrong in the comments that he made, and I don't think he should be held responsible for that. I don't know. It's an interesting point, I guess, to consider that there are just no roles any longer for little people in movies.
Well, I think it looks worse when you had what's his name, Boca? The SpongeBob cheater. His role.
Ethan Slater. Oh, yes. Bach.
Okay, Bach.
He's cheater.
Wow.
I mean, that's how he's known for it. Can we just acknowledge it right now? Mm-hmm. It was never not distracting.
It was
when
very
he
funny.
Was on the screen with Ariana Grande.
Yeah.
There was even a scene where he said to her, "I would do anything for you."
Mm-hmm. I thought she was gonna be like, "Leave your wife and child." Method acting. No, but it's like their whole thing is like, he keeps saying it like, I'm a Munchkin from Munchkinland, and it's like he has to say it because otherwise, what he
keeps saying it a lot.
Yeah, where there's even this point where he was like standing on books and then he got off them, and they're like, oh, he's much shorter, but he's very clearly not that short, you know. So they were trying to like show something, but I also think it probably would have. You want to talk about like inclusion and stuff like that. As a character, I think it would be a lot better if it was a little person, right? Like, because he's actually like a full-fledged character with like interesting. Well, it's not that interesting to me, but like, you know, he's obsessed with what's her name, but then Galinda. But then he's also has this other relationship with Primrose, what's her name?
Yeah, Narissa,
yeah.
Primrose, basically. Yeah, Narissa.
I don't know. I feel like it's more offensive to not have a little person, especially in the beginning when they're like, "Oh, we're this is Munchkinland." It's like, no, the fuck you ain't. You know, you're just kind of people. What makes
the
you
1939
Munchkins?
Film is right there, and you saw what Munchkins look like,
Yeah.
and
You're not very Munchkin-y.
No.
Why are you called Munchkins? I don't like it. But yeah. Why did I start talking about? What was my point?
Peter Dinklage, the animals.
Oh, the animals. Yeah, that's so weird. I don't know where they're taking that in the second one.
It feels. I mean, I'm not really sure what they do in part 2. I will say this though. Mm-hmm. One of the things I mentioned that I was concerned about was the fact that they split it up into 2 parts. This might be one of the most, if not the most successful part 1 I've seen. And I just mean in films generally, because I think part 1s, for the most part, do not work. I think Dune is the exception because that one deserved separate parts. But it needed it for sure.
It's like
but
Lord
I think
of the Rings and stuff. Some are kind of like, they're one big story, right? So they need it. And other times it's like, it's not massive enough to
one that
warrant.
I keep thinking, well, I mean, there's 2 examples, and this comes from books. Hunger Games and Harry Potter, their last 2 films, part 1 and part 2. I think both of them suffered in different ways. With the Hunger Games, I liked part 1 a lot, but I just thought part 2 was just like, just flatlined completely. I don't know what happened with part 2, but it was dead. It didn't work very well. And maybe I wouldn't have happened if you just made it the one movie as it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Then Harry Potter comes along. Deathly Hallows Part 2 is great, but Deathly Hallows Part 1, I fell asleep through.
Honestly, I think that that's a worse case to me than even the Hunger Games. Part 1, I can't remember any. They run around in the woods for 2 fucking hours. Like it's just so unnecessary. A lot of stuff happens. They just could have been cut.
And I also can't speak for this because I haven't seen this franchise, but this also involves books, and I think David's listening, but I'm not sure he wants to chime in. I think he has been forced to see the Twilight films, and I want to say that the last 2 Twilight films were also, what was it, Breaking Dawn Part 1 and Breaking Dawn Part 2.
Yeah.
So
You cut out his tongue, remember?
Yeah, when Wicked did this, it was just like, oh God, here we go again. But I gotta say, this was like a complete movie.
Well, see, you're saying that now, but maybe you see part 2 and you're like, part 1 works real great, as it is, and then part 2, it's like, I don't know.
But I'm saying that now because that's all we have to go off now.
Yeah. No.
In a year from now, which is what you were saying, I could feel very differently.
You would feel differently about part 2, but maybe not part 1.
We'll see about that as well, because part 2 also, you mentioned that it just isn't going to be as good as part 1. So knowing that, why would you do that?
Also, I feel like part 2 is going to be the one that they directly interact with the original story of Wizard of Oz. And probably
I hear Dorothy will be brought in. I think I heard about that.
Yeah, and make changes in a way where it's like, whereas when you're dealing with the past, you can just have fun doing your own thing,
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like, oh, we're going to be directly interacting with that original
and that gets
story.
dicey, especially because, earlier this year we praised Furiosa for doing a lot of those things, but it didn't piss us off one bit. They did it in a very organic way. Here, I have to ask you, how did you feel about the references toward, okay, there were many moments where
some of them
hit
yes. you over the head. Some of them where it's like, oh, I get it. Yes, it's the thing.
The Yellow Brick Road one was like,
you could have cut that out completely.
That's
so unnecessary. Oh, she picked the color of the road. Okay. who gives a shit? Honest to God, who gives a shit? That's 5 minutes they could have cut. Maybe not 5. But
and then you ask, all it does is make you ask questions. Okay, then what happened to the red brick road? Because it was also a red brick road.
Yeah. And it also makes you, it's one of those things where it felt like the Yellow Brick Road was there for ever. It turns out this was just some construction thing put in a year ago.
Basically, okay, the film that I think of the most, for examples like this, is Solo, a Star Wars story.
Yeah.
Do we have moments in this film, Wicked, that are like Solo, a Star Wars story?
Yes. Yeah,
which ones do you think qualifies?
The Yellow Brick Road one, for sure.
The lion.
The lion. Was there a lion?
That one, there was a lion cub. That it turns out that was the cub that's going to be the lion.
Really?
I think so.
Is that what they're... Oh, God. I hope that's not true. Is that the Cowardly Lion?
I think that's what it is.
Holy shit. I hope not. I really hope not. That's so stupid.
They get away with it here if it's the case because it's not too clear. But if in part 2 something happens, then...
stuff like her giving her the hat, I think that's fine.
That's fine.
It kind of speaks to that connection that they had and their history. But I'm having trouble remembering. I remember there was a couple of other things where when they popped up, I was
she already had the boots when she walked in.
Mm-hmm.
And then the broom she got toward the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the origin, I guess you could say, as far as origins are concerned, of how she was made to be the villain. I think that was executed very well. By the way, is Jeff Goldblum supposed to be her father?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's
I didn't
obvious.
catch that. I didn't catch it at all the first time. And then I was like,
why are they even fucking... That was the first thing that threw me off. It's like, oh yeah, because the movie starts and immediately they're like, oh yeah, her mom was some hoe that was fucking around, and that's why she got. And they very deliberately did not show us who she was fucking around with, right? Like they never showed us his face.
But they kind of give it away because I looked it up on the soundtrack while I was listening to it. Jeff Goldblum's voice literally
that was his
singing.
voice. Yeah, no, I heard it, and I was like, oh, okay. And I guess that's how they'll say why she's green. That's also something where that's kind of another one where it's like, does this add anything though? Like, why does this matter that would be her father? You know what I mean? I feel like sometimes story-wise, people will just add in lineages because they think it's cool, but with like no point to it. I don't know. I haven't seen part 2, so I can't say. I will say I'm very excited when I realized that that Dorothy is gonna kill her crippled sister. That's very funny. Because she's supposed to be like an evil witch. This is where I'm saying like they're gonna start doing changes, right? Because the whole point was the Munchkins were so happy that her sister was killed because she was a witch as well, and she terrorized them, right?
I mean, I guess at a certain point you just have to just separate the two.
No, for sure it's separate. But it's one of those things where it's harder to get into it because it just makes me laugh. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's like if you try to, I don't know. It's like if you take something and retell it in a way that's just so devoid and so different. It's just funny. It's like, no, she wasn't an evil witch. She was actually her poor, crippled younger sister, who is a good person, and just so happened. And it's like, well, then what's up with these Munchkins? Because now they just look like they just come off like raving lunatics, like these monsters, like evil little bitches, right? And that's just funny to me. Now I'm laughing because it's like, oh, well, okay, And even the idea of like, no, you don't actually, the wizard is like Hitler,
Yeah, basically, right? Like this is a different, like, because of the way I'm curious to see what actually happens in part 2 to make it kind of go back to.
Oh, but see, that's the thing, right? Because this begins, it feels like the ending of the original film, right? Like,
yes, exactly.
She's in the castle. She died by them throwing water on her, and they even showed the 4 of them walking back to Oz, to the wizard, to get their courage, get their heart.
And Glinda also said that the wizard had left.
Yeah, well,
so it's very much it's the same ending.
It feels like the story is exactly the same as
the
original
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, so that's why I'm really interested to see part 2 to see how they make it
go back
match.
On that, because that was like the Wizard of Oz was not a fascist.
Well,
he was just a grifter. I
guess you can kind of hide, but like the whole animal thing, right? Like it turns out that these as the lion's like, I'd love some courage, please. It behind the scenes, I guess the wizard is like thinking of slurs in his head to throw at the lion, right? Because
oh my god!
But that's what I mean. It's like so extreme.
Yeah.
It's like if Teletubbies did like a Holocaust episode. You know what I mean? It's like such these extreme ends of each other that you bring them together. It's almost humorous with how crazy it is, and that's the way it comes off sometimes. Like with the goat being like, animals should be seen and not heard, and it's like, this is fucking sad, but it's also like a goat, It's
you should okay. I there was a couple of clues that were in there that I had missed completely. When Alphaba first, makes her entrance and she does magic to get her sister from the dean, and then something smashes through, and it turns out they had covered over a mural that was animals.
Yeah.
I didn't catch it the first time. I'm just like, wait, what? I was trying to, but it cut away. And then I was so distracted, kind of rolling my eyes over the Idina Menzel, Kristen Chenoweth like cameos, that I didn't even hear the narrative
whole story. Yeah,
I didn't even hear that song. Yeah, and I'm like, oh wait a minute, that was actually kind of important.
That was like the most important. That's all the backstory and shit.
Basically, where it was like how he tricked these people into thinking like he is a wizard because he was telling them he could read it. That's how he claimed dominion over everybody else.
No one tried to fact check that?
Apparently.
You just rolled in like, no, yeah, I can totally read it. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I can read it. Yeah.
I mean, when there's money to be made and profit from somebody else's grift, why would you point it out?
True.
Which is, I assume
that you're also getting lifted with that tide, you know? The rising tide,
which explains Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah, for sure.
And then also Galinda.
Yeah. See, that's the stuff. It's not like it's bad. Like it works, right? Like I think reimagining the wizard is more than just a grifter, but like a political grifter. I mean, he is in power, right? So that's not necessarily bad. It doesn't work. It's not that it doesn't work. The same with having the Wicked Witch of the West actually be
a good person
and be sort of, it's like you were basically lied to, right?
Yeah.
For the story they're trying to tell, all of that stuff, I don't think is bad. I think it works.
No.
It's just sometimes the fact that it's Wizard of Oz, you know.
That's the thing, right? It's like it's not just a film that is a big movie. You're talking about a film that is perhaps the most beloved movie ever made.
Yeah,
it's a big, which is why the way that it looks is such a big detractor for us. It's a big issue.
Well, because you get the original and it's just so whimsical and like it's very much like a kid's film, right? It's like she meets the scarecrow. He does a dance. If I only had a brain, you know. It's just this cutesy adventure. And then it's like...
By the way, that's supposed to be Jonathan Bailey.
What?
Prince Fiero is supposed to be that damn scarecrow. And I'm like...
See, this is where they're going to throw me in the second one, where I'm like...
That's why I'm
not feeling this.
This is why I'm feeling Wicked Part 1, because I don't have that much faith in where the story is going to go in Part 2. And I like what you said, though, at the end, where you almost feel like a Part 2... isn't really all that necessary, because I think it works as a really good ending.
It's a
kind of like The Last Jedi.
It's a fucking depressing ending, but I think that also works too, because it's like you know the story, right? Like she is now officially the Wicked. They literally end it with calling her the Wicked Witch, right? Yeah, and you see how Glinda at this point sort of embraces Michelle Yeoh and the wizard, and everything's sort of in place for where it ends up, and you know where it ends up because that's where the movie starts, right? Now it becomes a depressingly sad movie because it's like, oh yeah, like it's kind of about the way evil totalitarian, it's basically 1984, where it's like in the end these totalitarian governments always win. You know, they win, they defeat, they push down, they poison the people.
It's such an interesting, like, what's the word I'm thinking of?
But that kind of makes me like it more.
Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, juxtaposition, because the ending is so dark and tragic, but the song also is that, but also kind of empowering.
Yeah, you know, where it's like, I'm gonna fight, you know. It's like, you know, she's going to her doom, but it's also, she didn't let them change her. Yes. You know what I mean? So honestly, I kind of like it.
It was a really good song. Like,
it's a great way to end it, right? Like, and from what I understand, spoilers, she doesn't. Oh, are you okay with spoilers, or do you know?
Yes, I mean, I don't search this out. It just kind of comes
Yeah,
across my feed.
osmosis
So I've seen
kinda
that she
stuff.
doesn't really die.
Yeah,
Is that what?
I think she
so-
like escapes. She
Yes.
pretends to
to be dead.
to melt, but there's like a trap door or something, and she actually, leaves Oz or something, and it's like, okay. I mean,
so
I guess,
I wonder.
yeah.
I wonder if we're gonna have a year from now. I'm really curious to see how part 2 is received, because we may
Yeah.
exist in a reality where part 2 ticks away
But see,
and not adds to the story.
most people aren't us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Most people already love the play as it is, the story.
But you also said that the consensus was that part 2 is weaker in almost every regard, including the songs.
True. Like because people love Wicked as a whole, but if you're gonna just take the most boring or the least liked parts and put it as its own movie, that might be that's a tougher pill to swallow if that's just experiencing that without, like, if I go to the theater and watch Wicked, I'm gonna come out going like, oh my god, Defying Gravity, awesome, right? But if I go to the movie theaters to watch part 2, it's like those parts aren't there, I'm just taking that tail end. So yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. And then also people who just grew up on the original film, technically that can fit in their memory with part 1, right? The original film really isn't touched, right? In the light way that they touch it, they don't change anything, right? You show her castle with her hat on the floor with steam. You see the flying monkeys. They're even blue, like in the movie. You see them, walking jollily down the yellow brick road back to Oz, and even she has the fucking bubble, Glinda, like I think other than the little people, they try pretty hard to stay visually somewhat similar to the movie specifically, especially the designs of like the Tin Man and the Scarecrow. The lion looks more lion-esque, but I think that's kind of cool. I like that. That's fine. But yeah, if you're saying Fiero is the Scarecrow, I don't know. Part 2 sounds kind of crazy in ways where I'm like, I don't know.
I could be wrong, but that does seem pretty crazy, especially because if you're going to do this continuity, well, if he's a Scarecrow, there are plenty of scenes where he's face to face with the witch.
Yeah.
And then it creates a problem that Star Wars is so known for, where these characters who have been face to face suddenly have this backstory, but they don't acknowledge it. Like, I think of R2-D2 and Obi-Wan Kenobi in A New Hope, where it's like, I don't seem to recall owning a droid, but there's 3 films where you're like nearby this droid, and Anakin never shuts up about R2-D2 unless like you're being. Then you have to recontextualize the original intent of that scene and then say, oh, no. He did know all along. He just didn't want to expose him. This is what happens when you do this.
It reminds me of like Anakin Skywalker actually made C-3PO. And it's so weird and unnecessary. And then it calls into question like other scenes where he's never like, oh shit, I made you, You're fucking annoying, or like something like that. And that's the way it feels. It's like, okay, so he's the first of all, how did you magic? Okay, I guess fine. He's a Scarecrow. Yeah, they are face to face many times with what's her name? Ebola. Elphaba. And he never calls her Elphaba. In front of he called her the Wicked Witch of the West and was like, she's a monster. I don't get. Okay, I guess I just have to see it because I'm doing a lot of questioning.
I know, and then this is the thing when you're comparing it, because you also just think of the Wicked Witch and Elphaba, and they're not the same.
No, their personalities are not, because like
No.
When she comes in and she's like, I'll get you, my pretty, or I'm fucking, like, it's Elphaba wouldn't come at her like that, It's very different. I don't know. And then also, it's still throwing me about the way her sister is the one who died. Also, like, what the fuck, Linda? So you're telling me you just pulled the shoes off her crippled sister's dead corpse and handed them to this girl, Dorothy, and said they're yours now? That makes it even more that's a crazy thing to do, Glinda. What the fuck?
I mean, it does make Glinda's actions suspicious, because when you look back at the text of the original Wizard of Oz, maybe that not really in the text, but just through happenstance, you could almost reinterpretate that whole thing as her being a big power player, because she eliminated the Wicked Witch, both Wicked Witches, and the Wizard of Oz in one film. Well, who's left in charge but her?
See, that's the thing. I feel like I guess this is why the like actually this is a depressing tale and these people are evil, and this is just shows again like 1984 for Wizard of Oz. I feel like that works better because it feels like they want to, in the end of the day, they're going to maintain the friendship between Elphaba and Glinda, right? But so that makes the decisions she makes in between, just from what we know of the original story, weird. Just to tell Dorothy, like, oh, she's evil. Here, take her dead sister's shoes. Again, her sister, who's not like a bad person that we know, or maybe she changes.
Like, what the hell did she do to get a house dropped on her?
What did she do to get the Munchkins to hate her so much?
Right.
And does she turn into a witch? Because they called her the Wicked Witch of, wasn't it the East?
Yes.
So what's up with that? I'm sure no one listens to these, but if someone was listening to this who's like a big Wicked fan, and they're like, you idiot, if you just know the story, it all makes perfect sense. Maybe, for sure, maybe. But it just kind of reminds me of other stuff we've seen in like Star Wars, where they try so hard to like connect two puzzle pieces that very clearly aren't meant to fit so well.
We spent so many nights of our lives just trying to. How many podcast discussions have we wasted just trying to put those pieces together? Anyway, last thoughts on Wicked. I'll just say myself, the songs, as usual, this is how I am. The more I listen to it, the more I love them. The Wizard and I, Popular, Defying Gravity. The first one I forget. No One Mourns the Wicked. All pretty good. Your final thoughts?
I enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed it slightly more than I thought I would. Overall, I think I was a little more impressed than I would be with Ariana. I knew Cynthia Rivera was great, but definitely with Ariana Grande and everything she brought to it. Not with the singing, but more her acting performance. I think it's enjoyable. I think it's a really good time. Yeah, it's overall, I would say, positive. Definitely.
It's just one moment that I keep thinking of that was so funny. Her and her like crew, her Mean Girl crew with Bo and Yang and the other one. There was a question.
See, that's the thing. It's played so light with her like her just like I for charity yet like it's like almost SNL level sketch like humor, and then it's like Nazis like it's such a whiplash. And also the Nazis are against goats, so it's like it can be a little bit of a whiplash for me, those two, but that's theater basically,
right? I mean, because that's what theater is. It can do that for sure. But I was that moment that keeps making me laugh so much. So when they're in the classroom and then Cynthia Erivo Alphaba, she answers a question without even raising her hand, and then they say I think Boeing is like, "Excuse me," like, "Yeah, raise your hand." That was a
good one. Yeah,
a lot of fun moments in there, and then of course the whole performative like of Glinda. I have an announcement. I'm not going to change my name to Glinda in honor of Professor whatever his name was, to take a stand.
That's what I mean. Like, it's
the sad part about that is that's the kind of performative nature that we see from politicians today.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that's why the ages were throwing me off too. Like they literally have a whole, we're sneaking out to have a dance, you know? And it's like, are you 13 or 30? I don't know.
I think some of them are over 40.
Yeah. But that's why it like the actions threw me off. That's not even some shit you would see in like college, you know, college age. That's like we're 14 and I don't know.
By the way, considering how much of a box office hit this is, do we think this is going to be a significant player for nominations for awards?
I think so. I think it's a surprisingly dry year because I saw like the. I'm gonna be so pissed if Denny doesn't get in for Dune. Like this is insane at this point because I saw some of the predictions. God awful. I was like, really? This is the best we have this year? Holy shit.
I was trying to tell you a couple weeks ago, I'm like, it kind of feels like a dead year to me.
Insane. Yeah, no.
I mean, personally, again, it's insane when clearly, if we want to have a discussion of Best Director, there's Denny, there's Luca, George Miller.
Oh, hell yeah. That's never happening, but yeah. Like, it looked so dead, I could see Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo both getting nominated for...
Which is, man...
Like a lead or something.
Happy for them, but man, justice for Rachel Zegler. Come on, she
don't pick them well.
But no. But the first one she picked was, hey, she was recruited. She didn't pick it, but like, hey, the first one you can say is an all-out win. The problem with her is that it was a competitive year. Whereas this is not a competitive year. That's the difference. This is also part of like the luck of the draw, right? Like when you get a competitive year, well, you ain't going to cut it. But when you're in a, like, for example, we talk about Black Klansman from Spike Lee. That got in a lot of categories where if there had been more films that were considered of
a caliber, yeah.
Yes. But that year did have those movies, but they were not considered. It was the problem there. Anywho, I want to second what you said about Denis Villeneuve. I rewatched Dune Part 2 over the weekend. How is that not just automatically a lock?
Best picture, best director,
picture.
Best visual effects, best musical. I don't know.
Hey, I think a nomination, I mean, if we're going to nominate Ariana and Cynthia, and they're great, and they should be, Timothy, Rebecca,
best actress,
Javier Bardem, Austin Butler, and Zendaya either for that one or for Challengers. What about Mike Feist or Josh O'Connor from Challengers?
I was gonna say, because it's such a dry year, I would think there'd be more power for
Challengers talk,
because Challengers it's a bit of a cultural it's got some cultural relevancy to it. Yeah.
Yes.
It did well in
box
every
office-wise.
box office.
Digital, like it's reviews, been around. People, yeah. It's got 3 big stars.
Yeah, I feel like it should definitely be more in talks.
MGM needs to push that movie more, and I hope that they are.
That's another thing. Sometimes it just comes down to whatever distributor you have, and whether they choose to push your.
Which is why the Iron Claw was a big casualty last year, because
I feel like
A24 had other priorities.
That's another thing. If that movie came out this year, that shit's getting Zac Efron.
We could even have a discussion.
He should have gotten a nomination for Best Actor. It was one of those performances, and it's right out the Academy's alley too. It was those kinds of performances. Yeah, it like, just
I've not seen The Substance, but it's been such a dry year. I've been seeing some people say, "Well, what if The Substance gets in?"
Oh, I thought for sure it's a lock.
I'm sorry.
People are loving it so much.
Is that not a horror movie?
Not as only a horror movie. It's like a gross out fucking body horror film. Okay,
putting the body horror to the side, when was the last time a horror movie was nominated for anything? I don't even mean Best Picture. I just mean anything above the line, or maybe even the crafts. The thing is, horror films don't even get nominated for makeup and hairstyling.
Yeah. They definitely will with this one, I bet. because they do have crazy.
Have you seen this movie?
No, but I've heard that I told you that was the movie I wanted to see in the theater when I finally had time, and then I go and check, and it's like, boop, out of the theater.
People keep bringing this movie up, and I feel like, well, I guess if people are liking it that much, I should go see it.
Remember how I made you watch Society?
I loved it.
Similar, but instead of class issues, body issues and aging issues.
Well, society had body issues too.
Well,
I guess you could say body imagery.
Yeah, similar imagery, but different themes. I'll put it that way.
Okay. Society is a great watch for those of you who have no idea what that movie is. And pair it with They Live, the John Carpenter movie. It's a great double feature.
Both are great to see, not knowing anything about them.
Yeah, for sure.
Those are great. Going in blind.
Anyway, Gladiator 2. Should we get to it?
Oh yeah, let me pull it up.
Let's get to the Letterboxd review.
Glad-to-ator.
Oh yeah, Glad-to-ator. Like I was thinking of Fan Four Stick when the damn title card came up.
Glad-to-ator, yeah. They had to do it. Directed by who other than Mr. Scott Ridley,
who has never won Best Director at the Academy Awards.
Has he never won?
Never won.
No, he never will. Prepare to be entertained. Years after witnessing the death of the revered hero Maximus at the hands of his uncle, Lucius is forced to enter the Colosseum after his home is conquered by the tyrannical emperors who now lead Rome with an iron fist. With rage in his heart and the future of the empire at stake, Lucius must look to his past to find strength and honor to return the glory of Rome to its people.
Am I not mistaken in thinking that whole Lucius thing was supposed to be one of the reveals, and then that description just oh well, here it is.
Paul Mescal, Denzel Washington, Pedro Pascal, Connie Nielsen, Joseph Gwynn, Fred Hincher, Leo Raz, Peter Mensah, Matt Lucas. Oh, that's who it was. Yeah. Yuval Gonin. A lot of people. Yeah, I think it was supposed to be a reveal.
That's how it played in the movie, and this description just kind of gives it away, although I guess in retrospect it wasn't that hard to figure it out. I think this unfortunately has the weight of its predecessor being a fucking amazing movie, but also one that won Best Picture.
Yeah.
So expectations are just like so sky high for this. Ridley Scott is an amazing director when he has a good script. So you never know what you're going to get with a Ridley Scott film, honestly. Early, late stage, whatever it is. What we can say is that first film is perfect. I rewatched it the day of when we watched Gladiator 2, and I was just like, this script, man, the lines that are firing off one after the other, everything about the craft and the execution of that first film, it's just it's transcendent. You can see why it was just a film that won Best Picture. It
came together and just worked on all cylinders.
It really did.
Yeah.
And so when you have Gladiator 2, and I will say, I feel bad that it has to compete against that. I do think, though, it's a fairly strong film. I had a great time watching this movie.
I had a good time, yeah.
When it veers off into being its own thing, I think that's where it's most successful.
Like most of these sequels, yeah.
Unfortunately, though, like with most of these legacy sequels, when it tries to overly connect itself to the past, that's where we run into problems, and that's where we bring ourselves down. I was reminded of Alien Romulus, hilariously enough.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Alien Romulus had some things about itself that could not help but tether itself to the past in very overt and awkward ways, and here we are again with Gladiator 2. And similarly to how with Wicked, like with the whole gray filter being a thing, and how it's not just that movie, it's all movies that do that. By the way, you see it also here in Gladiator, although you don't notice it as much because, well, it is what it is, right? But it's just so ingrained in what the style of movie making is now that it's just, here we go again. Now we have to cross this bridge here, and it's going to be awkward, and here we are, and Yeah. The performances are great all around. There has been some pushback on whether or not Paul Mescal was miscast. I don't know if I'd go that far. I think people are saying that he wasn't as charismatic as Russell Crowe. He wasn't supposed to be. Clearly. I don't think he was supposed to be, but I don't think he gets close if we're gonna. And I think he's competing against Charisma Man himself, Denzel Washington, who, quite frankly, steals this movie. And I think the movie actually ends up miscalculating because of how good we end up liking Denzel Washington. At least I wanted him to win. And then when he doesn't win, it's just like, well, I guess this is where we are. Anyway, conflicting set of emotions for me, but on the whole, I had a really good time. I liked the intrigue. And anytime Denzel was on screen, I was just like, this is perfect. The way he said some lines, give that man an Oscar.
Oh, yeah.
Just for that. Your thoughts?
I enjoyed it. I think it's perfect TNT Sunday afternoon watch. It does have that, that sequelitis though. Thinking about the movie back, I was like, yeah, it was not that it was killed in the edit, but it was hurt in the edit. You can tell there was,
like most Ridley Scott films in theaters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a lot of weird editing I noticed from scenes. Like at one point, Denzel's like get him washed up and have him meet me inside. And then you cut to Denzel walking inside, and he's already in the building,
Yeah.
And there's a lot of moments like that. There's like 4 really terrible day for night shots. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is terrible day for night. And it feels like they just didn't have the time or didn't have it feels like laziness where they're like, just get it now and we'll. And they're all, because a couple of them are like transition shots. Like one of them was Pedro Pascal arriving home on his horse. And it was like very clearly terrible day for night. And then it cuts to them inside or walking in and it's all dark. And it's like, you could tell like, oh, we didn't get a shot of him riding up to the horse at night. At that point, just cut out that shot entirely of him. Just have him show up at the home. We get it. He's home.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of editing, I think in the first 45 minutes, there's a lot of scenes that I think we could have done without.
Yeah.
I think it hurt the pacing too. Those first 45 minutes, I think were much slower than I would have liked because it picks up a lot in the second half. But that first hour, there's a lot of things I don't think we needed to really be at.
The pacing is really off in the beginning, and I think there's some muddled story choices. And again, I don't know if it's the edit. I don't know. But we were talking about this when we got out of watching it. I think that just the fact that he has a wife, unnecessary. I think it muddles his motivation.
You barely even remember that happened toward the end of the film.
Yeah, towards the end of the film, you're like, oh, right, his wife. Like, oh, okay, yeah. It just muddles his motivation. And I understand they were trying to do something like, oh, a little bit more gray, where it's like, oh, the man that he feels responsible killed his wife is actually kind of a good guy. I can understand where they were going, where it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I just think it's unnecessary, though, because the movie becomes less about his relationship with his wife and more about the relationship with his mother and sort of this life that he left behind. And I think it would be just more fitting just to be like his anger in the beginning stems from this community that he grew to call home being utterly destroyed by the Roman soldiers.
I mean, that whole first hour just convinces you that we're just doing the first movie all over again. There was nothing different, and then it just it makes a turn.
Mm-hmm. And it's like that turn
for
is
the better,
great.
For the better.
Yeah. But I'd rather you just start at the turn.
Yeah.
It's unnecessary. But Paul Mescal, you know what? I do think he was miscast. I'll say he was. And the reason is he's a great actor. He's not a movie star. He doesn't.
Yeah, maybe he won't be at all. But I will say, as far as him being a great actor is
something
concerned,
you can teach, though. I don't think it's something
sure.
you can learn.
I would also say sometimes you get lucky into being a movie star. I don't think it's all like, oh, you're that legitimately great.
No, but that's my point. I think you can tell movie star quality because it has nothing to do with acting talent. I think you could tell that Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone and even Dwayne The Rock Johnson were movie stars back at their shittiest acting because they just had that quality. They had the magic. Yeah. And sometimes you have great actors that have the magic, and sometimes you have so-so actors that have the magic. The point is, you gotta have the magic. You have to have that level of charisma in this kind of role.
I will say, I felt very much that there was a void of charisma when he was on screen, so much so. But that I don't know if it was entirely because of him alone, or also that many of the scenes he was opposite against charismatic actors. Yeah. Not the least of which being Denzel fucking Washington.
Well, it also hurts that like I was saying, his motivations are muddied, right? Because Denzel.
Can I say real quick? Have you seen All of Us Strangers?
I'm like 5 minutes into.
Watch it. I want to make sure we talk about that movie for 2023. Okay. Since we still haven't done that show, but we're gonna put a pin in that.
We're gonna do it. But he's very clearly a great actor. I'm not attacking his acting.
No, I know you're not.
But also, it's like there's these scenes where Denzel's like, "Oh, I see it in you. Your anger, your rage, your need for vengeance. Ooh, it's oozing out of you." And then you cut to him, and he's like joking with everyone. He's got that big smile, you know. And it's like, what fucking rage? Like, I don't see any rage, right? He was more angry in the beginning when he was picking corn and like the fucking chicken got in his way and he swatted it away.
Yeah.
You notice that? I don't know why. That really caught my eye. I was like, damn, he's really pissed off at that chicken.
Yeah.
But the rest of the movie, he's kind of just like, he's a chill guy, you know?
He really is.
Yeah. And that doesn't fit. That just doesn't, because you compare that to Russell Crowe, who has that fucking intensity, right? That quiet intensity, but he's also extremely charismatic. You need that. You need that in order to that's what this character needed.
Who do you feel? I don't want to say Austin Butler, but
no, fuck that.
No, I don't think so. Who would you have put in this role?
Although Austin Butler probably could have done it. I don't know. I think that's one of the problems, right? I think there's a very clear lack of movie stars. And I think Denzel really made that fucking clear. Because I was like, God damn. I used to be one of the people where it's like, fuck movie stars. They're overpaid celebrities. Who gives a fuck? There's plenty of great actors out there. But to be a movie star, it's more than just being a great actor. You have to have that just sort of innate charisma. And he would come in and just say a couple of lines sometimes for a scene, but the way he would say it, the way he would come in, it's just like, oh shit. Like there's no one better than Denzel.
Every time he was on screen, it made you happy you were watching this movie.
Yeah. He just killed it.
The issues.
He killed it, right? And that's kind of what you need. You need an actor for these kinds of roles. It kind of reminds me of what James Cameron said to Leonardo DiCaprio about his role in Titanic, where it's like, it's easy to go in and play a character that has all these vices or all these issues, and you know, you have all this to pull from. It's harder to go out and sell the audience on a character where he's just a guy, you know?
Yeah.
Can you be that charismatic? Can you rise to that challenge? It's not easy. It's very hard. That's why there are movie stars and there are actors. It's almost another different subset. You know who else has that? Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
Jeff Goldblum, he's got that star quality in the same way. I was just thinking about him because of
Wizard of Oz, or the Wicked movie.
Wicked. So yeah, he's not terrible. He's very serviceable, but it's just, in order for a movie like that to work, you need a movie star. that's the kind of one that you need for the role. But overall, it's a very entertaining film. Again, Ridley Scott knows.
Are you not entertained?
I was entertained. Like, Ridley Scott knows how to put a picture together, make it very pretty, make it work well from scene on an individual scene basis, basically. So the big battle in the beginning, really well done, right? And just looking at a lot of the CG of the big sweeping shots of the city and the boats. And this was this, I was thinking about it during Wicked, where it's like, yeah, like Ridley still has something that a lot of modern directors don't have, where even if it's like, this movie isn't hitting in the ways that I wished it would, his talent as a filmmaker is still very much on display.
Yeah.
All the action scenes when that motherfucker rode up on a rhino, I was like, oh hell yeah, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of it really, really worked. A lot of it worked a lot. It's just a lot of the same issues we can talk about. A lot of other sequels are just present here. Like the fact that they made him Maximus's son.
So unnecessary.
You didn't need it. He was already inspired.
But then
by
I
Maximus.
hear people around us who were clapping and excited, and they were like, "Well, then this is what you want."
Oh yeah,
and
of course, it's what the audience wants. Because it also kind of recontextualizes the first one, because the whole point is that Maximus lost everything, right? He lost his family. He had no reason to live. I think if he knew he had a son, he wouldn't be
That would have changed some things.
That would have changed a lot. There would
especially
be
if
no
his
death
son
wish.
was an heir to the throne, kind of.
Yeah.
Also, do they ever explain where the hell these two emperors came from?
No, I'm kind of okay with it. You can tell they didn't want to explain it. They're just like the new emperors. They just appeared. You could argue some other noble person took the throne. They had 2 children. Whatever. I'm okay with it. I really like the twin emperors. The characters, I thought they were pretty good. Joseph Quinn, I think, did a really good job. I don't know who the actor for the other one is.
It was Fred Hettinger, I think.
Fred Hettinger, he did a good job too. When he made Dondas his number 1 in command,
Oh my
I was
God.
laughing my ass off. I was like, oof. God bless America. Especially because everyone's in shock, but then because they don't want to lose their power, they just start clapping. Like, okay, yeah, Dondas, he's in charge, I guess. Little fucking monkey.
But then he makes Denzel Washington his number 2, or number 3 actually. And then once he leaves the room, everyone was just like, "Well, we know you're in charge here." So.
Yeah, there was like, he basically puts it out like, here's the head of the previous emperor. You all know what's up. I know what's up. Give me power. They're like, "Okay, yep, let's give him power." No, it's really, and I actually like a lot of the story ideas, making it about sort of the power struggle for Rome. You know what I mean? And him, because he's a prince of Rome, coming in and sort of being able to become a player in that way. A lot of it I like. It's just, it's very similar to Wicked, where it's like good, entertained, but also frustrating, because you can see the great film buried just below the surface. But yeah, overall it was positive. I enjoyed it. Like I said, entertained.
I feel the same way. And I mean, it's unfortunate that it wasn't better, because I would have wished we could have had a better discussion about it. But unfortunately, there isn't much more to say on this one.
Not much, no.
No. Well, with that being said, we want to thank everyone who has watched and listened. We hope you all have a great Thanksgiving. And we will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.